Welcome to the ADHD Biography. This is a show where we talk to people not just coping, not just surviving, but living with ADHD and thriving. On this week's episode, I talked to Hamza Richards. Hamza shares a lot of productivity tips with his LinkedIn followers, and you can hear them all today. Hit the subscribe, follow, and like button to keep up to date with the latest episodes of the ADHD Biography and help keep the conversations like this coming. Thank you. Hi, Hamza. Thanks for coming on the show. How are you?
How you doing, John? I'm all good. I'm all good. Thanks for having me on.
So, just first of all, if you'd like to give our listeners a quick introduction about yourself and what you do.
Of course. Yeah, so my name is Hamza. I am in tech sales. I have ADHD and I've started up a personal brand where I sort of help people navigate their ADHD through natural methods without using medication. And yeah, it's been going quite well. Just happy to sort of like provide value to people who sort of gone through what I've gone through in ways that resonate with them. So yeah.
And I think it's so important looking for those kind of natural ways of managing it as well, considering the kind of lack of medication available to a lot of people right now. Just going back to obviously your ADHD, I'm really interested to find out, when were you first aware that you had ADHD?
Of course, yeah. I love this question because it's like um growing up, I always felt like I was different from the other children. And of course, you're led to believe by the teachers, the people around you, even your parents, that you're just badly behaved. You're just stubborn. You just don't listen. You're lazy. But as I grew older, I realized that that wasn't the case, and maybe I was just depressed, or there was some sort of mental disorder that I was facing, but I didn't know exactly what it was. Then I stumbled upon a YouTube video during lockdown, and it was talking about, oh, do you ever find it hard to focus? I was like, I thought everyone finds it hard to focus. Do you ever find it that you're always forgetting your keys? I was like, I thought everyone forgets their keys all the time. But at the end, it named like 6 or 7 different symptoms of ADHD, and I was like, this is sounding a bit too close to home. I
Mhm.
might look into this a bit deeper. I then not read. I listened to the audiobook because I find it really hard to read. Called "Driven to Distraction" by Ned Hallowell, and from the first page to the last page, it literally sounded like he was just talking about my life, like his experience in childhood, his experience living by himself in work. And I was like, this is starting to like this. It really seems like I have ADHD.
Sounds like kind of almost like a light bulb moment of when you listen to that or watch that YouTube video where a lot of it resonated with you. And I know I kind of went through a similar thing, and it was just, it really opened up my eyes and was like, kind of, this is an actual thing. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't aware of it before. Obviously, you kind of went through that process, moved to Portugal, and you got your diagnosis. How has the diagnosis kind of impacted your life?
It's just giving me context. I think that's the main thing. Understanding that when I might not meet the mark, or like forget something that's super important, or miss out on a meeting, like not to be as hard on myself as I would have been if I didn't know. I understand that these things happen when you have ADHD, and I have a lot more grace with myself as opposed to before. I would have just been really hard on myself. Oh, you're so stupid. You're so like, how could you do such a thing? You're so irresponsible. Like, I can't keep doing this because like I don't attack my character anymore. I understand that it's not necessarily me, it's the ADHD majority of the time. So that's been the biggest difference, which has really helped me moving forward.
And yeah, I certainly understand that. What the understanding ADHD can go a long way to obviously managing that. And from your tips that you share on LinkedIn and the value that you try and add, um, you can definitely see, I think, that kind of that change. In terms of obviously being an advocate for kind of dealing with and managing your traits without medication. Yes, there was one point that I noted about um, rather than time management is energy management, and it was something that I kind of really resonated with. And
Yeah.
the meme that he kind of attached to that about, you know, 2 or 3 p.m. just like flat out on the desk, but like 2 a.m. like kind of wide awake. So yeah, if you could share more about that, that'd be great.
I sort of fell down the productivity um, rabbit hole on social media, just YouTube, constantly looking at productivity hacks.
Hey, me again. So we're actually going to see a bit of a costume change right now. This isn't part of the show. We actually had some technical issues during the first recording and had to reschedule for a week later. Enjoy the rest of the show.
I
Since then, what have you? Obviously, there's ups and downs that come with ADHD. Has having a diagnosis, or certainly from when you was aware that you had ADHD through lockdown, has that helped you manage the downsides much better?
Oh, absolutely. It's like having a clearer map. I know my shortcomings, I know my strengths. It's still not perfect. I don't think it ever will be in the world that we live in. If you have ADHD, we live in a world that's very much suited to those who are neurotypical. So it's always
Mm.
going to be a bit difficult.
Has that like impacted your career or job choices?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know if it's the same for you, but I need human connection. I need to sort of
Mm.
like be interacting with people, and to stay engaged in the job I'm doing. As well as that, I need to have some sort of incentive, because if I know that I'm going to get paid the same amount regardless of what I do, I'm like I'm probably going to do the bare minimum. Like, me just being very honest. So I need that sort of incentive to, maybe get a prize at the end of the month or get some commission. So bearing all of that in mind, the best option was sales, and that's what I'm doing now. And I absolutely love the job.
So in terms of like obviously that motivation, that certainly helps having something to work towards then every month.
Yeah. And it's like the perfect balance, because I don't get micromanaged, which I absolutely hate. I hate when someone's like strictly instructing me on what to do, like every single step. It's a lot better where like I'm motivated to work in my own way. So yeah, like sales is just like the best option for me personally, but I know it's not the same for a lot of people with ADHD.
Yeah, so within your role, because I kind of do something a little bit similar, it's a role that kind of has a bit of free reign. But do you find like, is there like a bit of structure as well, slight structure without the micromanagement? Do you have that in your role as well that just kind of helps just helps you thrive in that environment?
Yes, I'm very fortunate to work for a company that's very neuro inclusive. So I've been very open about that to my company and the management, and they've really helped me in that respect. So what they've done is they've sort of showed me different routines, like 3 or 4 different routines that I can follow, which allows for a lot of flexibility, which is very suitable for me because, of course, you know yourself, and we do need that bit of novelty. So when every day is the exact same, it can get quite tedious and boring. And once we're in a boring sort of space, it's crippling. It's
Yeah.
literally like our kryptonite. So yeah, we need that flexibility, and they've offered that to me, so I can have a structure for my day on a Monday, and it will be completely different on a Wednesday, but they both work for me, which is sort of like the best of both worlds.
Of a kind of similar thing with my role. I think the biggest thing is probably the variety of projects that I work on will look very different and will be all different timescales. Working with different businesses as well all the time and different people really helps. And like you say, that social aspect, there has to be a social aspect there, definitely within a role. There's no way I could kind of sit in an office and look at a screen all day and just kind of plow through the day typing emails. That's just not it's certainly not good for the way my brain works. Having that non sort of monotonous schedule, definitely, and a bit of variety, I think is definitely key. Having
100%.
having
100%.
done I don't know about you, but having done monotonous roles previously, yeah, like you say, it
Yeah.
can be like kryptonite. It's just almost becomes unbearable to the point, like you say, especially without any motive or incentive to do that role as well. Very,
Yeah.
very difficult. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And what were you doing before this?
the time that comes to mind as I talk about that is when I worked in retail management. Um, you're very much kind of in the same environment every single day, same location. Nothing much really changes, and yeah, it's just very monotonous. So it was really, really difficult
Yeah.
because there was no real variety within the day. As someone with ADHD, if I haven't got something new to work on, like a new project to work on, like new information to take in, something like a new skill to learn, is just really difficult.
Yeah.
Have you found that yourself with any of your previous roles?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because what I'm doing now is a lot more difficult and it requires a lot more work than what I've done in the past, but I'm less burnt out now than I was back then. So I realized that burnout doesn't necessarily come from the workload. It comes from like being stagnant and not knowing where to go and that feeling of that lack of growth feeling is where my burnout comes from. If you are in a spot where you're bored, you don't feel yourself growing, you feel sort of trapped, you're a lot more likely to be burnt out. Um, yeah, being in sales, there's always that feeling of growth because you can always get better, you can always like improve your skills, you're always talking to new people. I thought you froze there. I was like, not again. Yeah, so you're always talking to new people. So I've avoided burnout in this role because of that. So that's amazing.
Is there any other tips that you can share on avoiding burnout to anyone that might be listening and maybe be in careers where it maybe is a little bit monotonous? Is there any productivity tips that you can share with our listeners that might help them if they're in that situation?
Yeah, I would say you have to sort of gamify your job. You have to find, ways to, put rewards for yourself. Maybe speak to your manager about this and talk about maybe potential incentives just to, liven up the job. Um, as well as it creating some sort of plan that allows for clarity. I feel like clarity is super important for burnout because what that does is it allows you to look at what you can control and what you can't control. Um, because yeah, when you just focus on what you can control, it for me it does get rid of the burnout. I don't get obsessed over like the outcome. I just obsess over the process, and that helps with my burnout. So yeah.
Yeah, and I can certainly relate. Is there any tips that you implement into your day to day that help
Yeah.
with any of the negative traits of ADHD that you might find?
So one is having a high protein diet, a diet that really worked for me. I don't necessarily know the science behind it, but just having my eggs in the morning, sometimes some Greek yogurt in the morning makes a massive difference to like my focus and my energy levels. So like yeah, if you have ADHD, having a high protein diet is super super important. Um, supplements. There's a supplement that's really good for ADHD focus called L-tyrosine. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't. No.
So yeah, L-tyrosine, it's nearly as good as medication when it comes to your focus. It's really, really good. And so, for example, I know that writing emails is what literally ruins my day. Like I absolutely hate writing emails. That's the only part of sales I don't enjoy. I really like speaking, calling people on the phone, but when it comes to writing the emails, it's not for me. Um, So when I know I'm about to do that, I will take L-tyrosine, I'll have a coffee, I'll play some brown noise music, and that helps me get through that period. And I'll set a specific time throughout the day to do that, and then I know I'm done with that. So it's like swallowing the hard pill. Three is exercise. That's a non-negotiable. Um, I looked into like ADHD and like where it originated from, and I believe we used to be like hunters back in the olden days. So you can imagine a hunter was always moving, he was always engaged, he was always searching for the next prey. So yeah, that's just how your brain is built. So you need to move around. And exercise doesn't necessarily mean going to the gym and lifting weights. It could be going for a walk, it could be skipping, it could be yoga, it could be Brazilian jiu-jitsu, it could be anything. But you need to find an exercise that works for you and make sure you do it at least 4 to 5 times a week because it makes a massive difference. Um, and the last one would definitely be alarms and calendars. ADHD professionals that are really good with their alarms and calendars do exceptionally well. I was watching Addicted Gamer, something like that.
Mm.
He's a doctor, a psychiatrist who specializes in ADHD on YouTube, and he was saying the difference between ADHD individuals who use their timers and calendars versus those that don't was like night and day.
Mm.
So yeah, alarms and calendars, very, very good.
Yeah, and I find that really useful in my role actually, in terms of calendars and like you say, being able to focus on one thing, because I think generally a lot of people with ADHD tend to, whilst trying to do one task, also try and start multiple others without finishing what you started to do, started originally. So yeah, definitely with calendars, having those, what I find really useful, especially the reminders on the calendars as well, because for me, I need like visual prompts for a lot of things. So, say like first thing in the morning when I know what my to-do list is in my head, I have to write it down to be able to complete it.
Mm,
And with calendars, it's the same. It's having that visual indication, isn't it, as well too, and it just helps to keep on track. But yeah,
100%.
just to dive into the point you made about like the hunters, because it's not the first time someone's actually mentioned that to me, and I've never actually given it much thought before. Typically with ADHD, you tend to kind of think outside the box, or as if there's not a box, and ask why a lot. So there's definitely a point of curiosity, and you can definitely, I think that does translate to, like you say, that going back to prehistoric age, when humans were not as evolved, let's say, as what we are now, there definitely had to be the neurodivergence to think about exploring and looking for change. And if you look at even in today's world, there's a high percentage of entrepreneurs that have ADHD, and I think it is that level of asking why, just constantly being curious.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Like chasing that curiosity is a huge thing, especially in entrepreneurship. And like I remember growing up where I'd constantly like it's just I'm reliving my childhood now. I just constantly asking teachers like why, and they get really annoyed with me. But like it's just the way my brain is built. I can't just accept something for the way it is. I have to like know the reason behind it. Um, but yeah, just to go a bit deeper about the hunter and the sort of farmer analogy, that the neurotypicals were the farmers essentially, and the hunters were the neurodivergent people. And like, of course, as society progressed, like the more profitable way of doing things was through the farmer route. So the world ended up being built for neurotypicals. And I see a lot of like posts online, oh, how come everyone has ADHD now? How come everyone's neurodiverse now? And I just feel like it's an increase in awareness and a decrease in stigma. Plus, let's just say 100 years ago, there wasn't as many distractions as they are now. So your ADHD symptoms might not have been as prominent back then as it is right now because there isn't as much stimulation around the place. But now you, you're constantly being distracted by, I don't know, Netflix, your phone, just constantly being distracted. Plus, you're also forced to be more indoors, like work in an office, like write emails all day. Of course, like you're not going to be, if you have ADHD, you're not going to be able to cope with all of that. So I feel like nowadays, if you have ADHD, you need support. Maybe back then you might have needed the same amount of support you need now, but the amount of support you need now is like you can't go without it, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And I think um, still going through the diagnosis process myself and not having whether that's access to medication. I know for me, finding ways to sort of manually manage the traits, and I think certainly being aware of the traits as well. Like you say, when it comes to things like social media and anything that's a bit of a dopamine hit, like scrolling through TikTok, very dangerous. Typically with ADHD as well, you are a lot more prone to become addicted to things as well. So whether that's like things like gambling, which obviously there's online gambling now, which is freely accessible. I say freely accessible; it comes at a cost, of course, but easily.
And don't forget video games as well. Video games as well. That's a bad
Yes,
one as well.
massively, massively. And I know for myself, like I like my video games, but I know there's been times when, for example, playing Football Manager till 3, 4 in the morning, or even something like Call of Duty, FIFA. There is so many more things now that can take your attention and give you that dopamine release that it is really important, I think, for awareness, I think, of ADHD, but also, like you say, that support as well. What is the kind of biggest difficulty that you find in life?
So like I have a really big sweet tooth, so I have to avoid sugar because sugar is terrible for individuals with ADHD. I haven't quite, I'm not quite on your level in terms of avoiding the caffeine. I'm still really bad with the caffeine. Um, but yeah, like I avoid sort of doom scrolling late at night because then I'm just not going to sleep for a really long time. So yeah, those two really used to affect my ADHD, used to really make my symptoms a lot worse. But when I kind of reduced the sugar intake, reduced the scrolling on social media, I've seen a lot of improvements.
And you mentioned exercise, because it is quite a kind of recurring theme that we've seen on the podcast already. With exercise, how do you best ensure you're kind of consistent with it?
Yeah. Like essentially I do what you did. Like of course you got to a point where you hit that kind of brick wall with the weight training and the gym, and your thought straight away was to find something, like was to still remain, like to keep the exercise but to find something that you actually enjoy or that's more novel. And that's what I do as well. So for example, as I mentioned earlier, when I got bored at the gym, I immediately looked into martial arts or immediately started walking, and that's my answer to it. Like it's not about forcing yourself to stay consistent with something you don't enjoy anymore. It's about finding something new, but still remaining the practice of exercise, or some, yeah, like that's my tip.
Is there any particular sort of habits that you relate to your ADHD that you find is a superpower in your life?
Yeah, no, I definitely think the creative aspect of it. I've always sort of been like the funny one in the group because I'm really good at making those sort of connections and you know making the punchline. And that's one thing about my personality I actually like, believe it or not. Um, as well as being quite resilient. So I don't easily give up on things that like I believe in. So I'm quite resilient, but in a different, in a negative way, it can also be, I can be stubborn at times as well. But when it's working for me, I like that aspect of my personality, and I would say that hyper focus can be quite quite nice. Like I go into a lot of rabbit holes every day. I was looking up serial killers the other day, and I was up to like 2 in the morning just reading about serial killers, and like I do like that about myself. The fact that I could just chase my curiosity and just go over and beyond to just find out a bit more about a topic. And that is for me a superpower because I feel like that's why a lot of us end up being entrepreneurs because we're willing to go over and beyond to find out more about certain things.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate. I mean, when I started this podcast, when I had the initial idea about 4 weeks ago, just went all in one day. I think I had a couple of days off of work just on annual leave to use before the end of the financial year, and yeah, just had this idea, and suddenly in the space of like 24 hours, I had like an intro, like questions, like I'd ordered myself the equipment, like got in touch with a load of people about the podcast to either ask for advice or whether it was to come on the show. So absolutely, like it can definitely be a good thing, and also, yeah, like you said, a bad thing when you're scrolling through about serial killers until 2 a.m. in the morning.
And honestly, like if I could do it all again, I think I still would. Like if I could do it all again, I still would keep um, my ADHD. Like I really have grown to love myself and love my weaknesses, love my strengths. And like, yeah, that's been the hardest thing for me, just really accepting myself after like years of people labeling me as like associating me with really bad traits and like overcoming that and becoming someone that I actually love and admire, it has been a huge turning point for me. So I advise you do that internal work if you have ADHD because it makes a massive difference.
I can definitely echo that because it's so. I think with ADHD as well, at times when it's probably playing against you, you can be very hard on yourself, a lot harder than you should be, certainly. And I think it's really important during those times that you need to not only be aware, like you say, but also kind of do the work, but recognize that you are probably still doing your best in that situation and still trying to focus on the positives as well. So, yeah, definitely. I know it's one thing that one of our guests shared recently about they do a gratification journal to keep in mind those positives even during the bad times is definitely important. I think with ADHD, and like you say, that self-awareness is really important, and just being kind to yourself as well, because it's really difficult. It can be really difficult, and sometimes feels like you're dealing with it alone, and you maybe feel like you're the only one that's maybe dealing with it. But being able to share it is, yeah, it just makes you feel like you're not alone, doesn't it? And I think that's the key as well, is knowing that you're not the only one that's dealing with this, and there's nothing wrong with you. And you know that, like you said earlier about the stigma that's with ADHD, yeah, that it's definitely not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
It's great to share all your experiences, Hamza, and some really great tips on how to successfully manage your ADHD. And really interesting to hear about how you looked for a career that suited how your brain operates as well. Where can our listeners follow your journey and hear more about your productivity tips?
My name on LinkedIn is Hamza Richards. I post very frequently on how you can navigate the workplace if you have ADHD, whether it comes with company politics, productivity, and just like accepting yourself, doing the eternal work. I post about all of that. So if you're looking for tips on how to navigate this neurotypical world with ADHD, feel free to go and follow me on that.
Amazing. I know I've found a lot of your tips helpful, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will as well. So really appreciate you sharing that, and yeah, look forward to hearing also more about your journey as well. So thank you for coming on, Hamza. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity, John. Honestly, you're a great host. Had asked really great questions as well, and I see this doing really well and moving forward. So yes, thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.